In 2026, somebody paid $57 million for a piece of property in New York City. Now, $57 million in Manhattan isn't shocking on its own. Here's what's shocking. They didn't buy a skyscraper. They didn't buy an apartment tower. They bought a parking garage. Cars, concrete, a place to leave your Honda for the day. And the family that sold it had been quietly holding that useless little property since the 1980s, while the entire city exploded in value around them. So here's the question I want to answer for you today, and I'm going to give you the real numbers, the real cases, and the real reason. How does an empty lot, a flat rectangle of asphalt that looks like the city forgot about it, end up worth more than the shiny, expensive building standing right next to it? There are 4 reasons: cash flow, land appreciation, optionality, and a tax loophole most people have never heard of. By the end of this, you won't just understand parking lots. You'll understand how the smartest money in America actually thinks, and you'll never walk across an empty lot the same way again. Let's get one assumption out of the way first, because it's the assumption that keeps regular people poor in real estate. Most people think a building is valuable because of what it is: the glass, the steel, the square footage. But that's not how the money works. A property's value isn't about what's sitting on top of the land. It's about 2 things fighting each other: how much cash the property produces versus how much it costs to keep running. And when you look at it that way, a giant building and an empty parking lot trade places. The building you were taught to admire is often the loser. The lot you were taught to ignore is often the winner. Let me prove it, reason by reason. Reason 1, cash flow. And not just any cash flow with almost nothing eating into it. Here are real numbers. In a major US downtown, a single monthly parking spot runs around $400. Near New York City Hall, monthly parking hits about $770 for 1 car for 1 month. Now multiply that across 40, 50, 100 spots on a single lot. But here's the part that makes parking different from almost every other business. Think about a restaurant. Before it earns $1, it has to buy the food, pay the chef, run the kitchen. Every sale has a cost attached. A parking lot? It sells the same square of asphalt over and over all day, forever. 1 car pulls out, the spot is instantly new again for the next one. The space never gets used up. There's barely any cost per sale. And that's why airport parking, same business, bigger scale, runs profit margins that would make a tech company jealous. We're talking margins in the 70% range. One major airport pulls in over $100 million a year from parking alone at around a 76% margin. That's not a side business. At many airports, parking is one of the most profitable things they do. So reason 1 is simple. Parking prints steady cash with almost no cost attached. But cash flow alone isn't why these lots beat buildings. Because here's the thing. The cash is actually the least interesting reason. The real money isn't something you can't even see. Reason 2, land appreciation. And this is where people's brains break. Go back to that Tribeca parking garage that sold for $57 million. Nobody paid $57 million because they love parking cars. They paid it for the dirt underneath. The plan is to tear the garage down and build ultra-luxury condos. The parking was never the point. The land was the point. The principle the pros live by: in an expensive city, the building on top is temporary, but the land underneath quietly appreciates year after year completely on its own. Why? Because the city grows around it. More people move in, more businesses open, the neighborhood gets denser and more in demand, and the landowner doesn't have to lift a finger. The land just sits there getting more valuable while everyone else does the work. That's exactly what that family in Tribeca did. They bought in the 1980s, held a humble parking garage for 40 years, did basically nothing, and the island of Manhattan turned their patience into a $57 million payday. The amateur looks at a property and sees a building. The professional looks at the same property and sees land, with a building temporarily sitting on it. Reason 3, optionality. This one sounds boring. It's actually the most powerful of all. When you build a giant office tower, you've locked that land into one answer. You've declared, this dirt is an office building for the next 50 years. You're committed. You're frozen. And if the market shifts, say half the country suddenly starts working from home and offices empty out, you're stuck. You can't peel a skyscraper off the ground and swap it for apartments. You're married to a decision that's now bleeding money every single month. But a parking lot has committed to nothing. It's keeping every option on the menu open. Apartments, condos, retail, and office tower when the timing's perfect, all still on the table. The lot is a fully loaded piece of prime city land that's earning cash while it waits for the most profitable possible future. And here's the twist most people never realize. That waiting isn't laziness, it's strategy. There's a famous lot near New York's High Line where the developer has deliberately kept it as a parking lot for around 20 years, while luxury towers shot up all around it. He's not confused. He's waiting for the single most profitable moment to build. The parking lot is just the holding pattern. It pays the bills while the land keeps climbing. Which raises a question. If he's sitting on land worth a fortune, why on earth would he leave it as a parking lot for 20 years instead of building now? The answer is reason 4, and it's the one almost nobody talks about. Reason 4,
taxes. This is the hidden engine, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. In most of America, your property tax is based on the value of what you've built. An empty lot has almost no improvements, so it gets taxed at almost nothing. Build a big, valuable building on it, and your tax bill explodes. Here's a real, almost absurd example. There was a parking lot whose land was valued near $860,000, but because there was no building on it, the owner paid only about $13,000 a year in tax. Now imagine putting a tower there. The tax bill could jump to hundreds of thousands per year, instantly. So look at the brutal logic. Build now, giant tax bill, giant maintenance costs, locked in decision. Keep it as a parking lot, tiny tax bill, tiny costs, steady income, and the land keeps appreciating in the background. The system literally rewards you for keeping prime land empty. That's the real reason that developer near the High Line waits 20 years. The tax code is paying him to be patient. America accidentally built a system where, in the right spot, doing almost nothing with valuable land is the smartest financial move you can make. But now we have to ask the deeper question. Why does America have so many of these incredibly valuable empty lots in the first place? And the answer is something the government did on purpose decades ago, and it's reshaping cities right now. For most of the last century, American cities had laws called parking minimums. These laws forced developers, by law, to build a certain number of parking spaces for every store, office, or apartment. Want to open a restaurant? The city tells you exactly how many parking spaces you must build first. The result? America paved an astonishing amount of its most valuable urban land just to store cars. By some estimates, there are hundreds of millions of parking spaces in the US. In some cities, several spaces for every single car. So the empty lot economy isn't an accident of laziness. It was mandated. The law manufactured an ocean of parking, and savvy landowners realized those mandated lots were secretly some of the best low-cost, tax-advantaged appreciating assets in the entire city. And here's how valuable this stuff really gets. The city of Chicago once leased out its parking meters, just the meters, for 75 years to a group led by investors from Abu Dhabi for about $1.1 billion. Sounds like a great deal for the city, right? It wasn't. The investors made their entire money back and then some within about 15 years. They're now sitting on 60 more years of pure profit. That's how powerful parking economics are. Even the meters on the street are worth more than entire companies. So let's stack all four reasons and feel the full weight of it. A parking lot near the High Line, or in Tribeca, or in any growing downtown, it costs almost nothing to run, basically a flat surface and a payment machine. It generates steady daily cash with almost no cost per sale. It pays almost no tax because there's no building. It keeps every future option open, and underneath all of that, the land itself silently appreciates as the city grows richer around it. Now compare that to the proud, expensive building next door. It's a mouth that has to be fed every single day. Heating, cooling, elevator, security, insurance, repairs, a massive bank loan, and a property tax bill that scales up with its value. If the tenants leave in a downturn, the costs don't shrink. The building keeps eating while it starves. Think of it like a business with enormous fixed monthly expenses. It has to eat a fortune of cash before it can make any. That's the whole secret. The building looks like the winner because it looks expensive. The lot looks like the loser because it looks empty. But on the actual math, cash in, cost out, risk, taxes, and patience, the empty lot quietly wins. And here's where this stops being about parking at all. What you just learned isn't a parking fact. It's a mental model for how money actually moves. And once you have it, you start seeing it everywhere. The lesson is this: people are drawn to the impressive thing, the big building, the flashy purchase, the asset that looks valuable, and they ignore the boring thing sitting right next to it: low cost, low tax, flexible, patient, quietly compounding. But the system tends to reward the boring thing because the impressive thing is usually a mouth that needs feeding, locked into one decision, fragile the moment conditions change. And the boring thing keeps its costs low, its options open, and lets time do the heavy lifting. That's the real game, not what looks valuable today, but what survives, stays flexible, and grows quietly while everyone else is busy feeding their expensive trophies. So go back to that $57 million parking garage in Tribeca. The family who held it since the 1980s wasn't sitting on nothing. They were sitting on flexible, low-tax, low-cost land in one of the most valuable cities on Earth, land that paid them every single day just to hold it and wait. The useless lot was never useless. It was playing a slower, smarter game than every shiny tower around it. That gap between what looks valuable and what actually is valuable, that gap is exactly where the smartest money in the world quietly lives. And now you know how to see it. So next time you walk across some forgotten parking lot in a downtown, take a real look. You're not standing on empty space. You're standing on one of the most patient, tax-advantaged, money-making machines a city ever built, hiding in plain sight, pretending to be nothing. At PopSavvy, that's the whole point. We don't just explain companies. We explain the invisible systems that quietly move money all around you, the ones nobody ever points out. So if you want to keep seeing the world this way, stick around, because once you start noticing how the money actually works, you can't stop.